Welcome back to another episode of Torque. Well, it's always a good day if you're installing new parts on a restoration. So today we're installing a Global West coilover system on the front of the 1965 Mustang convertible. So let's head out to the barn and get to work. Alright, so the last episode you guys probably saw is me painting that engine compartment. We wheeled it out of the booth. It's still on those little subframes that I built. So we're going to go ahead and jack this up, put it on jack stands, and then we'll start installing that Global West system. Alright, so you can see that we removed this little subframe area. You can see there's areas where the bolts and the washers were covering up and they've got a little bit of rust underneath. So we'll go ahead and remove that rear frame area and we'll touch all these areas up with a little bit of paint. Alright, so I got the front suspension all unboxed, and man, this stuff is really cool. So this is that Global West kit. We've got the new upper control arms, we've got the Viking double adjustable coilovers, we've got the lower control arms, we've got the these are the upper shock mounts for those coilovers that will bolt underneath on these billet aluminum pieces. We also have the sway bar kit, pretty cool billet aluminum mounts for that. And then we have the upper bump stop for the upper control arms. It's a far cry from the original. The original one looks so outdated. This stuff should be really easy to install, should be pretty straightforward. It's powder coated all black. So let's go ahead and start getting this stuff installed. All right, one of the first steps it tells you to do is actually open up these slots. It's for these mount bolts for the cup. You want to make sure that it's open up enough that you can actually paint that exposed metal in there. I did it previously to painting the engine compartment, so ours is all covered up and all the bolts will go in. It does come with these 12-point stainless. They're polished stainless bolts. Make sure you use NICs on all these bolts. All right, so the next step is to open up these holes for the upper control arm. These are 1/2 inch. We need to step it up to 9/16. I'm gonna go ahead and use my step drill. I'll have to do it on both sides because I don't want to go into the next larger size on the step drill. I want to make sure that I'm only getting 9/16 straight through. All right, so I've got my step drill all marked. That's actually 5/8 where I've got it marked there. So I just have to go to this mark, which is 9/16. Let's go ahead and drill this up. All right, so now when we got the holes opened up to 9/16, we're ready to put this in. I put a little bit of this assembly grease just on the threads. This does come with a 3/8 spacer. Since we don't have the negative roll kit, we don't need this spacer. But one thing I will do is I will put these little spacers that they use, you know, for doing the alignment in there. I don't want this flat surface to go hard up against this painted surface. Not unless we have to during the alignment. So these will minimize the amount of area that will actually contact that paint. So we'll just put these washers, the lock washers and nuts on here and just lightly torque them. All right, let's go ahead and get this other side in. All right, so let's go ahead and put in this lower control arm. So first thing on the directions is to put this this forward section of the lower control arm in. There's a bushing that was around this bolt. It's supposed to go into place. Mine didn't slide in, so I actually tapped it in first. I wanted to make sure it was going to go in nice and straight. Also, the aft mount. This is really close, really tight. So I'm going to spread that just very slightly, and I'll show you how I'm going to spread that. All right, so what I did is I got some all thread. You can see this all thread, and it's got a nut on the inside. I've got some washers kind of built up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this together inside of those two lugs and then just loosen these out, and it's going to spread it out. I only need a little, very little. I just want to be able to slip this thing in. I don't want to bend it too far out. So let's go ahead and take care of that. All right, so hopefully you can see that build up. So I've got this and it's snug. So all I'm going to do is just loosen this up. And that's all we're going to do. We're not going to go any further than that. All right, we're going to go ahead and get this forward leg in. It's still going to be a snug fit. You can see that this has the round bottom. That's going to mimic that same round bottom right there. So there we go. We've got it all the way seated. So let's go ahead and put on. Got a huge washer on this thing. Lock washer and the nut. Now we're supposed to torque this to 90 foot-pounds. All right, so we've got this torque down up front. This is an adjustable sleeve, left hand and right hand threaded rods. So we're going to adjust this so that this will slip right in. Got to adjust the length. There's a 1-inch wrench. Let's see if I'm turning it the right way. Yep. Okay. Now this is off a little bit. Needs to be adjusted. And this is still snug fit. All right, so next we want to adjust the sleeve, and you want to try and get it to where this moves completely free. You don't want any pressure at the forward or aft bearing. So you'll move this, and you feel that you can see how loose that is. So there's no pressure on that at all. If you have some pressure on it, you're going to wear out one of your bearings or both. So that's where we're going to leave it at, and we'll just lock it down right there. All right, you guys may have picked up, I put that bolt on the aft lower control arm in the wrong direction. It should have been going that way, and that's because you have that engine cradle that runs across. I knew something was screwy. I looked at the manual, and it actually shows the head on the aft side, and that will keep that bolt from departing. So make sure you have that bolt going forward. All right, we're going to go ahead and torque this down. I think the manual said 30 or 35 to 50. I'm going to torque it down to a 45. All right. Looks pretty good. All right, so for the driver's side, the bushing just fell right in, which is great. There was really no play on that. Of course, I'm going to have to spread this out. So we'll go ahead and do that, and we'll get this side finished up, and then we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so next on the directions is actually to install these Viking shocks. These are really nice pieces. You need to put NICs on the threads. They give you a warning. You have to put those on. You can gall up the threads for these spanner nuts. So make sure that it goes all the way to the top. You don't have to disassemble it to get NICs on there. There's enough give in these shocks that you should be able to pull down on these, put some NICs on the threads, and do not let this spring back hard, because you have bearings that are in there with the spacers, and then you'll be able to move this, and you'll be able to spread that NICs on those threads. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and feed this up inside of that upper control arm. Make sure that your hex head is pointing forward. Now, installing these 12-point stainless bolts, make sure that you have anti-seize on those threads. Okay, these bolts get torqued to 25 foot-pounds. All right, so I ended up taking those bolts back out, at least the one. These are all loosened up, and the reason being is because the washer on this thing that comes with the kit is the exact same size as the head of the bolt. And now these are small heads, so it was putting a lot of pressure, and it was actually starting to dent in, making it kind of conical there, and it was popping the paint. So we are going to go to a larger stainless washer. I will put some anti-seize on the top of this, just so the bolt head can turn on there, and that's going to spread out that pressure. So hopefully it won't damage that paint as much. Much better. Spread it out a little bit. It did buckle the paint just a little bit in certain areas. We'll be able to touch that up, though. I'm not too concerned about that. Let's go ahead and do the other side. Okay, let's go ahead and get this side in. This side did much better. Didn't pop any paint at all. Definitely change out those for larger washers. Make sure they're thick enough to apply the force too. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and hook up this coilover to the lower control arm and the bottom. I was hoping to be able to put these compression rebound adjustment knobs on the inside, but it actually hits part of the control arm, so there's not really enough room to do that. So let's go ahead and put these spacers. They go on both sides of the spherical bearing, and we'll go ahead and put this bolt in. The bolt only goes one way, coming in from the aft, and that's just because of the bracketry as well. All right, so they didn't spell out a torque in the directions on this bolt, but it's all shear pressure. So all we have to do is snug it down, make sure there's really no movement, and that should be it. That's pretty good. That'll work. Let's go ahead and do the other side, and then we'll continue on. All right, so we've run into a problem, and that is you're supposed to put a spacer on both sides of the shock, and if you put the spacer on the aft side, you can't get the bolt or spacer in the front side, and that is because the shock is actually hitting this bracketry for the sway bar. Let me see if I can get you guys a close-up view of that. And that's right there. So I called Global West, and I think they had a bad run. So they really want a spacer on both forward and aft of the shock. So I have to radius this bracket. Kind of bad for as much as you paid for this, but they did seem really concerned, and they are going to follow up, and I think they're going to let me know about what happened. So I'm going to get out a little bit of die grinder, and we're going to have to start cutting into this this bracket, try and relieve it a little bit. I'm gonna mark it first, just so I know I pull off enough metal. This metal is thick enough. I mean, this metal is probably 3/16 of an inch. It'll easily be able to handle that pressure from the sway bar, even with that little bit of metal removed. So we've got some work to do. want to radius this enough that I have about 1/8 of an inch clearance on that, because this is going to move around a little bit and shift. So you definitely want to have some room in there. You don't want to be banging up against that shock. All right, one side down, one to go. All right, let's go ahead and put this side together and see how much of a gap we have now. All right, so this is back on the driver's side. Let's see if you can see the gap. You can, I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but I've got at least a 1/16 of an inch around that shock. So that one should be good. Let's go to the other side. And you can see I've clearanced that as well. So it's got about a 1/16, maybe more than that, maybe closer to an 1/8. So now let's take it back apart and then clean and paint those little areas, and then we can start going back together again. All right, so I got those areas radiused. I have also put 2 coats of epoxy black primer on there, and it's going to be hard to tell that it's even been repaired. It looks pretty good. It blends right in. So let's go ahead and put this back together again, and then we can move on to the next step. All right, so we're ready to put on the spindle. This is one of the original drum spindles. You can use it for this kit. So I blasted this myself, sent it over to Indy Powder Coating. They coated it in a satin. You guys are on the Indianapolis area, they're an excellent place to go to. I've been using them for 20 years. So when you put this on, you're gonna have to put a little bit of pressure. This boot is pretty stiff. A spacer will go up on top of the spindle, then your nut. This is torqued to 90 foot-pounds. The upper one is torqued to 70 foot-pounds. Let's go ahead and get this installed. I have a rag here, and that's just to keep the powder coating from getting marred up when we torque this. All right, so I backed this jam nut for the coilover down all the way out as much as I possibly could. It's almost hitting the adjustment knobs. That's going to give us the room to actually jack this up and attach this upper ball joint. So I need to use a jack. I got to be really careful because I don't have any other weight besides the body. You know, I don't have any engine or anything else in. So we're going to try and lift this up and get that nut on. There is no spacer on this upper one. It's only on the lower. So I couldn't get that started. The body just started lifting off of my jack, so I'm gonna go ahead and let this back down in just a second. So now we'll go ahead and torque this to 70 foot-pounds. And I got the torque on this. I need to adjust this a little bit more. I'll get out a wrench and see if I can get just a hair more on this thing, and we can line up that cotter pin. All right, so you won't be able to get ahead of a ratchet of a torque wrench up inside of here, so you're gonna have to use an extension. And let's set this thing at 70. And we are damn near lined up top too. Just a little bit off. So I'll adjust that and then we'll get that cutter key in. All right, so the next piece to go on are these shock tower supports. These things are really cool. They did an excellent job on these. You can see they've got slots on the side and all those bolt holes line up. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these in, and I'm gonna show you What doesn't line up, no fault of theirs, because every car is different. So I'll go ahead and put these in. I won't tighten them down. I'll put them on loose because you're gonna want to adjust it a little bit. All right, so this is what I'm talking about. I've got those loosely on. I'll push it all the way up. I don't know if you can see that, but they're not lining up perfectly. They're half a hole off. So I'm gonna have to take a little die grinder, open those things up. Those two bolts up on top need to be tightened first before you tighten those side ones down below. So let's go ahead and open this up, and then we'll be able to install our bolts. All right, so I'm back to the Dremel, lack of a compressor. I do have a putty knife here, and I'm gonna put that underneath. I don't want to mar up the finish on that new piece, so I'll put that underneath. We'll open it up just a little bit with this, and then we'll see if we can get those bolts in. All right, one down, one to go. There we go. So I'll go ahead and tighten these down. I may put a washer on the back side of these since I open up that slot, and then yeah, tighten it up, and we'll go ahead and move to the other side. All right, so on this passenger side, I'm pretty sure, yeah, it's off also, so we're gonna have to open that up. I'm pretty lucky. I did replace a battery box sheet metal right here, so there's not a hole drilled right there. So I get to drill a hole and it'll be perfect. So let's go ahead and install this side, and we'll open it up. All right, so I've got these snugged down a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and use that hole as a template and go ahead and drill right through that. That's going to give me my final hole. All right, so we have the Global West coilover system fully installed, and I gotta say it looks really cool. The only thing that I was really disappointed about was grinding that area to, you know, make area for that coilover. But it didn't take that long. I got it all painted up, so it should be good. The strut supports that we put in, the bolt holes being off on that, I could see how that could differ from Mustang to Mustang, so that's not a big deal. The coilovers themselves, you're able to adjust the ride quality on those. I did set it up for comfort, for compression and rebound, so hopefully it rides pretty good. It's probably going to be another year before this thing is sitting on the ground, on the wheels, ready to roll out, but we'll have to wait and see. The only thing I wasn't able to install was the sway bar. The sway bar, I kind of put it up in place. It interferes with the front part of the lower control arm, which is kind of strange. Directions say you have to have it with the weight on the wheels, so this has to be sitting on a rack, you know, your wheels are on, or somehow compressing the suspension itself in order to bolt up that sway bar. They're the experts. We'll see how it works out. Here pretty soon we will be installing leaf springs on this. Those are 1-inch lowered leaf springs, and I do have, and just arrived, a set of Willwood brakes to go on the front of this, which you guys will see the installation on that. So with that pretty much wraps it up. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something, and I hope to see you on another episode of Torqued.